Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. While we're getting everything set up, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box.
Jennifer, do you see that the chat box is disabled?
One moment. Thank you for that reminder. It should be enabled now.
Thank you. Thank you, Jean and Paul and Sarah, for letting us know.
All right, so let's get started. Again, I'm Jennifer Clark, the Operations Coordinator with the New York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And I'd like to be the first to welcome you to today's webinar, A Haudenosaunee Perspective on Historical Trauma, a journey through history from creation to residential schools to missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Before I hand things over to NYSCADV's Director of Prevention, Lorian Castell, to begin, I'm going to go over just a few housekeeping tips for interacting in today's webinar. We do have the chat box enabled to post any comments or questions throughout the presentation. We also have a Q&A box, the Q&A box enabled as well. We should have time at the end to go over some of the questions that come up in the chat box. We are recording today's webinar, and a recording will be available for view within the next few days. I also did want to bring your attention to, we have closed captioning enabled for today's presentation. If you would like to turn that on or to view the transcript, you should be able to do so from your toolbar. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Lorian Castell.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Good morning, everyone. Well, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all and to introduce our speakers today. So I'm Lorian Castell, and just as I identify my pronouns, I also want to identify that I reside on Seneca lands here in Rochester, New York, in a town called Irondequoit. And it's a word derived from the Senecas describing how the Genesee River, Irondequoit Bay, and Lake Ontario all converge. And the name roughly translates to where the land meets the water. And I encourage you and invite you all, if you are aware of the land that you stand on and the Haudenosaunee history here, wherever you are, to share that in the chat. For me, the reminder of where we stand is a reminder that if we are in the Americas, certainly, but in much of the world, there is a history of conquest, of genocide and colonization, and a suppression and occupation of the people who originally cared for that land. This is something that NYSCADV is deeply committed to upholding and honoring. NYSCADV is especially honored to have our presenters today, as we are in the business of addressing trauma. If you are a domestic violence program, a rape crisis program, a program that serves victims of really any crime or a combination of all of those, then you are addressing trauma of individuals, and yes, of whole communities. It is so critical that we have an understanding of not just individual trauma of the people who come to us for help and support, but of historical and collective trauma, and of the communities impacted by the common denominators of white supremacy, colonization, and what almost always includes genocide, enslavement, and displacement. We must be connecting the dots between all forms of systematic and institutionalized oppression if we are to address any forms of oppression. poverty, racism, homophobia and transphobia, misogyny and sexism, all the things that together create a world where intimate partner and sexual violence and hate crimes and the subjugation of whole groups of people are permitted to thrive. The movement to end gender-based violence, which I'm assuming you have an interest in if you are joining us today, or that you work for an organization that is addressing this in your community, it's not a one-issue movement. So it is our honor to bring these speakers together to discuss a Haudenosaunee perspective on historical trauma. And this is on the heels of a week in May where we acknowledged and honored and raised awareness of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and also the horrific discovery of more than 300 bodies that were exhumed in Canada very recently, just in the last few weeks. This all further bringing attention to this time in our history, but that has ongoing impact for Indigenous communities. I want to, without further ado, introduce our speakers, Michelle Shenandoah, who is from Indigenous Concepts Consulting, but also the founder of Rematriation, which I'll let her tell you about. Amie Barnes, who is the executive director of the Seven Dancers Coalition, and her staff, Keena King and Talon Sunday, who will be joining us. And they will take us through a history of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, a history of what has happened in terms of stolen lands and broken promises and treaties, and residential schools all the way up to today, where we're still feeling the impact of some of that history, and how we can best support Indigenous communities, particularly people who are victimized by sexual assault or gender-based violence or domestic violence. As again, I want to reiterate that this is, what we bring us all together to discuss. So I'm going to turn this over to Michelle. Michelle, thank you so much for being here. We will sort of give you a heads up as we ask you to wrap up your presentation, and then Amie and her staff from the Seven Dancers will take a moment to sort of switch gears and have a smooth transition between the slides. And we'll make sure that we leave time at the end of both of their presentations for discussion and comments and questions. But do feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat box, and NYSCADV staff will be monitoring that and sharing that with our presenters. So Michelle Shenandoah, it is my honor to introduce you. I'll let you begin.
Thank you. Now I appreciate that. Siguli, Guluhianuas Neogets. I'm Michelle Shenandoah. I'm a member of the Oneida Nation Wolf Clan. And I'm really honored to be here today, to be invited back to present to NYSCADV and to all of the community with NYSCADV, and also to present alongside the Seven Dancers Coalition. It's really quite an honor and thankful to be here. So I started today, before we began, with asking for some words and encouragement. It's been really very hard and devastating throughout Indigenous communities in the Americas with the news this week. And so we want to tread lightly. Some of the topics that we're covering today, actually all of the topics I should say we're covering today, are really heavy. And we want to treat them with care and understanding that there are many ancestors who were left in spaces that were not comforted and not departed with love. And so as we're talking about these today, we want to treat them with care and ask that you'll please take these stories into heart and into mind and into spirit, and embrace them as you walk throughout your days and as you walk throughout your work and you work with our communities. As these are our ancestors, these are our stories, and it also happens to be our shared common history. And that's one acknowledgement I think that as all folks here in the Americas need to recognize, especially as we move forward into spaces of equity, inclusion, and thinking about how we conduct ourselves as human beings. So with that today, I'd like to jump into my presentation. And for some reason, my little timer on my phone isn't working. So oh, there we go. All right. I just want to pay attention to time and make sure that I don't go over on my time. So today I'll be presenting on, our Haudenosaunee people. 7 dancers will be presenting as well. There will be a lot of overlap in many spaces, but as we say in our culture, you have to hear things over and over and over again in order for it to become your truth and to become part of your history and understanding who you are. So please bear that in mind, because as Haudenosaunee people, we share a collective story. And so here we go. Okay. So one of the questions that I like to ask, and Lorian started this out really great. Thank you, Lorian, for presenting, a land acknowledgement and where you're located. One of the things that I always like to ask in all of my presentations is, where are your feet? Literally, where are your feet standing right now? Whose land are you on? And I know for NYSCADV, we're talking about New York State. And so one of the things that I want to bring to your attention is this next map here. Sorry, I'm having an issue getting between my slides. There we go. So the Haudenosaunee territories, these are our historic territories, and generally where we're located today. As you can see here, when we start from the east and we move to the west, we have the Mohawks, the Oneidas, the Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and in the 1700s, the Tuscaroras came to join us and now are located out near the Niagara Falls area called Lewiston. And so as you can see, those are our traditional territories, and you can see the map of New York that's there. But if you look far over onto the right side of the screen, you'll see that the Haudenosaunee actually had a really strong network of nations here along the eastern seaboard. And you can see this area here where we had other relatives, right? We like to refer to each other as family. We like to make family with all of the world around us. And even as humankind, we're all family who are here today, as we are family with the natural world, but also with each other. Even with the European settlers who came, we became brothers, we became siblings, and that's how we conduct ourselves, because you tend to treat your relatives with care, right? And so it's important to notice whose lands that you're on, right? And as you take a look at these territories that we have, you can see how expansive they are across the state. And so pay attention to that, because this becomes important. So keep this map in mind as we move along. One of the things I also like to bring to people's attention is to thinking about, what is the language of the land? So as you're thinking about the people whose lands that you're standing upon, what is the language that the Indigenous people not only speak, but also their relationship with the land? Because there is many sort of integrated elements in terms of understanding how you live on those particular lands, and recognizing that the Indigenous peoples of those lands have lived here since time immemorial. And we're the ones who have been the stewards and the caretakers of those lands, and actually have the knowledge about how to live in balance with the lands that you are currently standing on. So as humankind is thinking about, how do we move forward? How do we make this better world? How do we make this happen? Many of the answers are found with the Indigenous peoples. So I want you to think about that, because through history, Indigenous voices have been silenced, they've been oppressed, they've been erased. And so I'm hoping that in this presentation, you'll walk away with a new perspective about Indigenous peoples, and reconsider your relationships that you have with the communities and what your approaches may be. When you're thinking about the Haudenosaunee, I think it's also really important to understand our cosmology, our worldview. And here you can see there's this picture of a woman we call Sky Woman, and she came from Sky World. So our belief is that we actually came from another place in the universe, and Sky Woman was the first being to come here after the animals. This used to be just a land or a planet only of water. And you can see here, she fell through the sky and the animals helped her in her descent. And a turtle came up and lent its back for her to be able to land. And there's a really long, beautiful, intricate story, which I really hope that you'll have an opportunity one day to hear the story in more detail. And today I'm just sort of giving you a nice little overview so you can understand more about who we are and how we view the world. And so in our presentation today, and maybe throughout time as you move forward, and especially as you work with Haudenosaunee people and other Indigenous peoples who also share the same story, you'll hear us refer to Turtle Island, and Turtle Island meaning the land, right? And so she had this land. She was on the turtle's back. She danced upon it. It grew, and it became, what we now know as, North America. And you can see there's just a lot here that's embedded in here. I can, and all the ladies over at Seven Dancers could go into great detail about all the different elements that are in this. It doesn't just happen to be random animals and random images that are placed in here. Each element has a really very specific story that really ties into our worldview and how we operate today and how we view our relationship with the earth today, because we as humans are those caretakers of the earth, and embedded within this story is instructions on how we're to walk on this earth. One of the other things that's also really important to understand about the Haudenosaunee is that we are a matrilineal clan system. Throughout time and throughout our history here as human beings, we had moments of chaos, we had moments of disruption, we had moments of war, and throughout those times, each moment of chaos also then came order. And it was usually through a vision, through a message, that was brought to our people that we listened to, and it developed different markers in time for us. One of those being our clan systems, which is really, really very old and goes back to the very early times of human beings, and helping us to understand how to care for each other as humans, especially as we encountered for the first time such things as death, and not understanding our own emotions with death, and also helping to bring structure and order within our longhouses. So as Haudenosaunee, we are people of the longhouse, and this clan system really helps us to be able to work together. And in that structure and in that order, we kind of have three branches of government, if you will, that will determine how we make decisions for our nations. And this very, very early system is something that you can see reflected. So I'm going to say things to you that sound really very familiar, that are parallel to what you see in your government. And that's for a reason, because the founding fathers actually did replicate a lot of our governance that you will see in yours today. So we are matrilineal, which means that you gain your nation and your clan from your mother. And so for all of us here who are on the call today, who are Haudenosaunee, and we can trace our lineage all the way back through our mothers, back to this early time of this clan system formation. So when the clans were formed, I can trace the lineage of the women all the way back to the very first woman who became the first wolf clan mother. So you can see our clan system is really, really quite old, but it's one that continues to exist today and continues to work today. So another one of these moments of calamity was wars. Our nations eventually, pre-European contact, and we're talking more than 1,000 years ago, began to fight with each other. As human beings do, we've had conflict as well. And so we entered into these wars, and they were really very vicious, brutal blood wars, which Then a messenger came to us who was the peacemaker, and he brought this great message of peace. And I'm highlighting this woman here whose name is Jigonsase. And Jigonsase is actually the mother of nations. And she was the very first person to accept this message of peace, and then also became a helper to the peacemaker and became very, very integral into the formation of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. She was the very first person to put into position our chiefs. And also please notice that I did mention we had clan mothers before we had chiefs. So we actually had a sisterhood and a brotherhood among our nations that was created, which then came together in this confederacy that was created and given to us by the peacemaker and founded on these principles of peace. So Jigonsase, you can see here, became one of a very integral part of our confederacy, and 50 chiefs were named alongside 50 clan mothers. And you will see in time, we moved from 50 chiefs to 49 clan mothers. And so we asked what happened. And I hope somewhere in this story, you'll begin to put some of those things together. So each one of those chiefs and clan mothers has a title, and that title descends. It's passed on through the clan system that is still very much active and alive today. So within our great law of peace, we have a peaceful way of living that's founded in love and compassion for each other and forgiveness. It's respecting all of life and giving thanks for all of life. We are the oldest living democracy on earth, continuous democracy that still exists today. We have a democracy that's over 1,000 years old, founded in principles of peace. And I'd like to ask you, where on earth can you find that anywhere else? There's a lot to gain here from the Haudenosaunee. So much so, we had such influence on the founding fathers that your US Constitution is modeled after our forms of governance. I do another presentation where I go through a lot of those parallels so that you can see them, but today I'm just kind of touching upon them so that you will have that information. In addition to that, the way that our societies were constructed and the role of our women, being that not of equals, but of an elevated status because we are life givers, had such an influence on the suffragists. That's what really got them to get up and go and fight for their rights, because they saw these women who were in their absolute power and freedom and safe, right? And own their own minds and property. And so here you can see within, our women's authority, we had the clan mothers. The clan mothers were much in charge over our fields of corn and our food, which is our economy. They choose all of our leaders within our confederacy. And they also have the power to remove leaders. They have the power to remove a chief. So they elevate our chiefs, and they can also take it away if he begins to act in his own self-interests. That's a really, really very powerful position when you begin to think about it. The clan mothers are also responsible for the well-being and the representation of their clans, which they bring to our chiefs. Our clan mothers are sort of like at our state level, who are looking over the well-being locally within our nations. And we have our chiefs who work sort of more at what you would call that federal level among each other and between different nations. And our women in general have absolute autonomy over our bodies, our children, our home, our lands, our thoughts, our way of being, and whatever it is that we choose to do. And it's been that way. And so here you can see what is called the women's nomination belt. And this represents the strength of our women. As you can see, each one of these individual figures here represents the women among our nations. And you can see they're holding each other arm in arm. And that is a sisterhood supporting and holding each other up among our confederacy. And here also you can see what's called is the one dish, one spoon belt. And really that's a teaching among the Haudenosaunee Confederacy that says, if one of us eat, we all eat. If there's not enough to feed everybody, then none of us eat, right? And so we all just make sure that we all look out for each other. and care for each other in that way. And that our women really are the ones behind that. So it's not about success. It's not about how hard you work. It's about taking care of everybody. And that's the really big difference that you'll see between the Western point of view and a Haudenosaunee point of view. So what happened? So we have war, patriarchy, colonization. I encourage you, please, to look at the Sullivan-Clinton campaign, which was inside the Revolutionary War. It was a direct attack against the Haudenosaunee by George Washington directly, and it broke apart our nations. It was like an atomic bomb that went off, and it was an attempt to burn and destroy Haudenosaunee lands for the taking of the land in order to settle the colonists here up in New York State. If you ever wondered why it's called the Empire State, Washington stood at the eastern shore of Oneida Lake, which was then as far as the colonies had went, and looked out and looked to the west and said, "This is my empire." Right? So here you go, the Empire State and the Sullivan-Clinton campaign. With that was also the push to build the Erie Canal to help bring people up to New York and to help to settle the lands. For those who fought in the war, all of the soldiers who fought in the Sullivan-Clinton campaign were promised land, Haudenosaunee lands specifically. So they had a reason to fight in this war. And so if you look further into that, you'll see all of these towns that were settled were named in the name of these soldiers. So with that, you also have in this time, you have the role of Haudenosaunee women that were shifted, our roles were attacked. You have even the hand of the Quakers who helped in bringing our women out of the fields and putting them into the houses and getting our men out into the field. And that was a big, big disruption in our way of living. And when you really look at who we are as people and ceremonial people, the women are very much tied to the land. They're in charge of the food, as I had mentioned before. And it's a very, very deep spiritual connection to our food and to our seeds. And so that was a really big cause of disruption within our communities. In addition to that, this is just the scratch of the scratch of the scratch of the surface, folks. I hate to say it, but it's very true. So there were lots of policies that attempted to deal with the Indian problem, as New York State called it. If you look within US policies, you have, the Indian wars as well that are going on, attacks to be able to deal with Indians, right? Well, we're not Indians, but that's what we've been called throughout policy and time, mostly because Columbus was lost and thought he was in India. But here are just some policies just to give you an idea of how this all went down. Our spiritual ways of life were outlawed. You have the creation of the residential boarding schools, which we'll talk about today. You have removal, where people were actually removed from their lands and relocated to different places. You have termination, where actual nations of people were just eliminated with the little stroke of a pen, right, and legislation. You have things like the Dawes Act, which was meant to sell away our land. You have blood quantum, which was meant to erase our peoples genetically. It's eugenics. And things like the Indian Reorganization Act, which attempted to take our traditional governments and put them in a form that the US government could recognize. And so those are just a few little things just to give you an idea of how our way of life was so vastly interrupted. I'm sure many of you have all seen in the national news the really horrific news of these young children's bodies that were found in the residential school in Canada. And here you can see the response. There's a lot of our people who went and placed 215 pairs of shoes on the steps of Catholic churches and an attempt to mourn and to honor these young souls, and to also bring attention to Canada in this particular instance, the devastation, right? But one other thing I want to let you know, which I think is really important, is that this didn't just happen in Canada. And there's a really very ugly truth that happens, which is this happened across the Americas, and it's very much a colonizing tool to help to assimilate and eradicate Indigenous peoples. These right here are baby handcuffs, and they were found on Haskell Indian Nations. It's now a full-on tribal college, but it was initially one of these residential schools. And this here was found in the campus, among other things. But just to give you an image of what this is all about. And so you can understand that this is really about the elimination of Indigenous culture, and people, and lifeways. So with that, I'm going to take you through just a little bit specifically of one school and a little bit of an overview of some of the schools that in the United States, and touch upon just only briefly sort of the parallels that happen with Canada. But I know that Seven Dancers Coalition will present a little bit more about Canadian policy, and I'm presenting to you today a little bit more about US policy, because it's important to understand that these schools were government sanctioned. They were government sanctioned in Canada, the US, and within Mexico, you have the missionaries. And if you move down into Central and South America, you also have the missionaries as well. Very similar tactics. And so with Carlisle boarding school, this was the first boarding school of 357 across the United States. So consider that, thinking about how many of those schools were in each of the states, were in each of the Indigenous communities, and some of them far, far, far away. So Carlisle specifically, not all schools, but Carlisle specifically, operated for about 40 years. And it was one of the more notorious schools as well, that operated from 1879 to 1970. And it says that it enrolled about 10,000 children. I don't know how these numbers impact you, but when you really begin to think about children literally being pulled from their homes, they didn't go willingly, nor did parents allow them to go willingly. There was federal agents and police forces that came and took the children, and the parents didn't have any right to them. Carlisle specifically was sanctioned by the government and operated by the US Army. By the US Army, imagine US Army officials raising your children, right? Think about the types of things such as corporal punishment and the types of behaviors that, or environment that your children were subject to. So these were an experiment, literally an experiment that were designed to kill the Indian, save the man, and assimilate into white Christian US culture. Children as young as 3 and 4 year old were forcibly taken from their families to attend these schools. Now, I'm focusing a little specifically on Carlisle because I went to the school myself, and so I wanted to share this with you today. Here's one of the pictures from Carlisle, just to give you an image of enrollment on any given year. And all of these children here are taken from Haudenosaunee communities. We have hundreds, probably thousands of our own people that were taken from our communities and sent to Carlisle, or sent to boarding schools like the Thomas Indian School in Cattaraugus, and which is one of our Seneca communities. And here they were forced to become white Christian kids. They couldn't speak their language. They were beaten. They were raped. And many of the kids never survived. I think it's important to know that residential schools across the Americas are the only schools for children that have cemeteries. Think about that. Would you send your child today to a school that has cemeteries willingly, right? Or unwillingly? Then what would you wonder what happens with these kids, right? Well, here is just an example. All the children, when they got to Carlisle, were taken by the guardhouse to instill fear with them. And here's the guardhouse. Carlisle was initially an army barrack, and then became one of these residential schools. So this was initially meant to house, prisoners that the army had brought in. And so here you can see, though, this is where they also put punished children. So here is a cell, and you can see, you know, the locks that are put on here and the metal bars on the door, and you can tell it's really designed for men, right? For women, whomever prisoners, right? It's for adults, not for children. But our children went through this. Here you can see they're right outside now of Carlisle, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. It's now again a military site and training campus, and you can go there. So now all of the buildings are you know, occupied and being used. But these bodies here were buried on the campus, and they were relocated into a cemetery. And the cemetery has over 200 children buried in it. And what's really sad is you can see here, many of the children are also unknown, right? Much like the story of what you're seeing today in the headlines, is that there are these children that just perished and nobody cared. They put them into the ground. They didn't give them any sort of markers or any sort of name associated with them, or even tell the families. So as you can see here also, when you look across the names of the children that actually are named, some of them aren't even their real names. Many of them, when they got to these schools, they were given an English name so that they wouldn't be using their Indigenous names. Many of the kids are also children of leaders, of chiefs, and of clan mothers. And that's, again, designed to directly attack our own form of government. Now, this is sad and it's tragic, and this is in the United States. Let's not miss that point. I think one thing, you know, it's very easy to look across the border and say, oh, this happened in Canada. How awful. You know, the Canadian government and the US government. Remember that. Okay, this is super, super important, because there is an untold history, and it's important that you have to learn it. And what you need to do is to look beyond what you've been told, what you've been taught. Because if you do the research and you look into the history, you will find this. It's not a mystery. It's just only not been shared within schools. So I encourage all of you to bring this information into the work that you're doing, into the context of what you're doing. So imagine now all of the generations that flow from all these kids that went to these boarding schools. How does that impact our community? And that's more about what Amie is going to talk about, and the 7 dancers will talk about today. But I think it's really important for you to acknowledge that this history is here, and it's across the entire United States. So this isn't just now, or this isn't just history. This is now. Excuse me. This isn't just history. It is now. So the last boarding school to close in Canada was in 1996. Just think about that. That was within the last 20 years, right? About there. And in 1973, there were 60,000 children still in boarding schools in the United States. So this isn't too much of the you know, it is part of our recent past. While Carlisle may have closed in the early 1900s, this continued across the United States and across Canada and also across Mexico. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that. So I'm going to come back to Haudenosaunee, and I want you to think about something, and think about the history that I just outlined to you, which included residential schools, included wars against our people, taking of our lands, right? Here you have a picture of Carolyn Parker Mount Pleasant, and this is in the 1850s. She was the last person to carry this name of Haudenosaunee. And as I said, remember that these names and these titles descended, right? So now among the Haudenosaunee, we have 50 chiefs and we have 49 clan mothers. So what happened, right? Why is it that all of a sudden she disappears? So I want you to take that into consideration. And I hope that this next slide will sort of help to illuminate some things for you. So we're going to take a step back in time even further. We're going to go back to the early times when Columbus and European explorers were coming to the Americas and found that there were actually people here. What were they to do, right? And so in 1493, the Pope had created what's called a papal bull and called the Doctrine of Discovery. That Doctrine of Discovery declared the lands of the Americas as terra nullis, and terra nullis meaning the land of nothing, meaning there's nothing here, right? So the lands are open and free. And it was claimed that the indigenous peoples who lived here, because of the fact that we were not Christian, we did not have souls. And therefore, it gave the right to the European explorers to do what they liked with us, to kill, to rape, to mutilate, to decimate in any way, shape, or form, to enslave. Here you can see some of these Spanish explorers who brought these dogs and they would attack the people. And so there's just horrific stories. They're there. You can search in the history and to find them. And you wonder, what does that have to do with today? Well, the Doctrine of Discovery became the legal basis for the United States and for Canada to claim title to the land, right? And in 1843, you see the Supreme Court, for the very first time, they integrate the Doctrine of Discovery into a case that was about a land settlement. And they invoke the Doctrine of Discovery right into the laws of the US, and basically claiming title to all of the lands within the US territories, to be therefore forever legally settled. So you can see embedded right in the foundation of the United States is this doctrine, which is horrible, right? Because it basically, again, just goes back to that place of indigenous peoples being invisibilized, the terra nullis, and you think about that. So you see that in 1843 and you think, wow, well, that's still so very far, back in history, right? And I'm sure many of you have, heard folks, telling indigenous peoples to get over it, to move on, you lost, etc., right? And that's such a horrible and racist way of looking at indigenous peoples. As we move forward, now that this country is starting to know more, know better, and make different choices, you have to take a look at this history and see the intersections and how it plays out today. So we know that the laws of this country are founded on precedents. And this therefore makes its way into the bedrock of the laws of this country, and not just within laws that come out of the Supreme Court, but it makes its way into legislation within Congress. It makes its way into the educational institutions. Did you ever wonder why in your education, you didn't learn about this history that I'm telling you? You didn't really learn about Haudenosaunee people, probably to the level and extent of what we're just sharing with you today, and why you probably only learned about us in a very sort of historical context that's very sort of anthropological, that focused in on maybe sort of our local way of living and made it really look like we are people of the past, right? And you even wondered, wow, do these people still exist today? Well, it's designed that way because this way of thinking has really become all pervasive and made its way into how this country functions and how it thinks. So I'm just going to give you a contemporary example for you to consider this as well. In 2005, the Oneida Nation, which I'm a member of, had been in a series of legal battles with the state of New York. The United States Supreme Court had established that New York State illegally took millions of acres of our land and they had to settle with us. So we've been in and out of courts with New York State for 50 years plus. And finally, in 2005, there was the ruling of the city of Sherrill versus the Oneida Nation. And in this, it closed the doors forevermore on our land claims through the court system anyway. And in here, I will note that this case was written by Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And in this, she cited the Doctrine of Discovery. I understand that it's the whole court. She is the one who wrote it. And she basically is saying she breathed life back into this Doctrine of Discovery. And I'm glad that she did. When it first happened, I was really upset. I'm, trained as a lawyer. I have a JD. I have an LLM in taxation. And this case came out when I started law school. And I went into law school to work on our land claims case. And so it shut the door on our case. And I didn't understand the implications of the Doctrine of Discovery at the time, but I do now. And, basically this court again had said, as Indigenous peoples, you don't have rights to your lands. You don't have rights to being or existence or existing because you're not Christian. You don't have souls, right? So you have to take a look at how prejudiced, how racist and biased the laws are against Indigenous peoples. I think that that's really important for you to understand. When you bring this into contemporary times, again, what does this mean, right? So if you remember, the women are in control of the land. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean to European settlers and to colonization and colonizers and to the laws? Who's in the way of settlement in the Americas? Indigenous women, because truly we're the ones who are in charge of the land. You wonder why. Why does this issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women happen today? Well, put it all together, right? Put the laws together, put the racist thinking and the prejudiced ways and beliefs, put it all together. It's there in the laws. It's there in the educational system. If you look in the media, we're not even represented in the media. We saw during the elections in this past year, Indigenous peoples were referred to on CNN as something else. And, there's just been many different, congressmen and, legal officials who have really just sort of diminished and minimized Indigenous peoples. And so, here's some, statistics for you. I'm going to leave that a little bit more for Seven Dancers to go through. And so I want you to think about this. So LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who left us recently. And so I just want to pay tribute and honor to her for the work that she did for Standing Rock and standing up for her community and for the rights of water. And here she says that the abuse of women is well known in history and tells you a lot about what's happening to our earth. As I mentioned earlier, the women are connected to the land. We are in charge of the lands and we have a close relationship to the water, which is the conduit for bringing life and keeping life alive. And what do women do? We bring life into this world and we are one of those conduits. And so here, what she's telling you is to think about that relationship and think about as the expansion of these countries and the growth of capitalism and material goods and the extraction of resources happens, it's raping the earth. And what is happening at the same time is happening to Indigenous women. Right here is a picture of Onondaga Lake. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that if you're familiar with this lake, it's right outside of Syracuse. And this here is really where the birthplace of democracy happened, where the Peacemaker and Jigonsase and Hiawatha and Tadadaho came together, and all of the formation of our great Haudenosaunee Confederacy happened here. This is sacred land. And it happens to be one of the most polluted waters in all of the United States. It's been a Superfund site, and so you can see how throughout time, how those who've settled in the lands have treated the lands. And this here, I know that when Notre Dame burned, people were just so upset and beside themselves and wanted to rebuild. What about this lake? It's just as sacred. If not, it's something to consider and think about. How do we walk in balance with this world and in relationship, right? So consider that and think about that. So as we're talking about lands, we're talking about the diminishment of people, the diminishment of territories. I want you to take a look at this map here. You remember in the beginning, you could see the Haudenosaunee lands that were all sort of identified within those red spaces. And here now, if you look, you can see our territories. There are these little purple, squares and shapes that you can see. All the millions and millions and millions of acres that were illegally taken from our people. I'm going to repeat that, illegally taken. So when you think about where your feet are, I want you to consider this, is that you are standing on those lands because our people were in relationship with the settlers who came here. And so either you are on the lands because there's treaties that exist with our people that allow you to be in those spaces, or the lands were illegally taken, right? And subsumed within these court cases that, assumed title to these lands. There are instances where the Supreme Court has retracted, has acknowledged these illegal takings. And I think it's important for you to note that, because as you can see up in the far right corner, you have the Mohawk territories that are there, from Gunnesadage, Ganawage, Ganyange, Akwesasne, Tyendinaga, and up in Canada over to the left, you also have Six Nations and Oneida Territory. And if you look where the Senecas are, they got pushed out a little bit more. They're a little more in the west, and you can see the Tuscaroras on there. And in the center here at Syracuse, where I am on the Onondaga Nation lands, you can see us there. The Cayugas have begun to return to their territories after being pushed out. And the Oneida Nation, we actually lost the most land out of all of the Confederacy. And I will say this, that during the Sullivan-Clinton campaign, actually the Oneidas had sided with the Americans, right? And so we had, as Haudenosaunee, declared neutrality, but some people were forced to take positions with the British, some with the Americans. I think that the Mohawks had sided with the British, the Oneidas with the Americans. And so you can see, siding with the Americans, our lands had been promised by Washington, by the president, to be forever protected. We are the ones that lost the most land. So I want you to think about that and think about, how does the United States honor its word or dishonor its word? So just take that into consideration. I just want to leave you very quickly with this information here. As Lorian had mentioned, I'm the founder of Rematriation Magazine and Media, and you can find this free film on our website, which is called An Indigenous Response to Me Too. It is actually a really great discussion that helps to explore violence and sexual violence within our communities, and what are some of the ways in which we're addressing it from our way, and looking at spaces of restorative justice. So I think it's something that you may find really very useful for the work you do at NYSCADV, and also in interacting with our communities as well. So here's a little bit about me and the work that I do, again, with Rematriation Magazine. In addition to that, I also have a consulting company that I run with my husband called Indigenous Concepts Consulting. You can find more information about us at rematriation.com and indigenous-concepts.com. And I do hope that you will look us up and call upon us for future presentations if you need. We're always here to help, and this is the work that we do. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over back to Lorian and to the 7 dancers. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a lot of information in a short period of time. As we transition to the 7 dancers, and I believe Jennifer will be loading their slides so that we can see them. I do just want to say that on your website for Rematriation, there is a way to sign up as an ally and to get ideas about how to be an ally, and information sort of specifically designed for that. So I wanted to bring that to folks' attention. And I also wanted to say that there is an Amie and you may be doing this as well. We do have two questions. Do they know what happened to the 215 children? Were they murdered? And is there any effort to identify the unknown children's identities through DNA? And so, Amie, I'm sure you're going to be addressing this as well, but Michelle, just in closing for now, as we're transitioning, is there something that you want to add? I think that you were really very clear and powerful about the residential schools and the fact that these are the only boarding schools in the world that have cemeteries. So if you just wanted to speak on that for a moment as we're transitioning, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Yeah. So in response to both of those questions, I think it's important to note that the conditions on these schools were deplorable. And the children were malnourished. They were not treated well. They were continually and frequently beaten, sexually abused. So it's no surprise that children perished. If they were directly, murdered, that is a possibility. However, I think it's just important to know, however you want to define murder, right? The intent was the elimination of Indian identity, which is exactly what happened when these children perished. I think that going to, the question of DNA testing, certainly, that is a possibility. Certainly we know that that's a lot of work on the part of those, who have to pull together evidence, and, whether Canada will provide funding for that, has yet to be seen. But I think that it is the responsibility of Canada and the church to make sure that those types of, steps are taken, or how amends are made. But that, yeah, I hope that answers the questions.
Thank you. And there is, I know, a Canadian sort of reconciliation project, but by the government that I certainly have been watching with interest, and hoping that the United States, that the US would do something similar. Michelle, thank you so much. You just always provide such an amazing context every time that we've worked with you, and I feel very privileged to learn from you every time. So we're going to turn this over to the Seven Dancers Coalition. Amie and Keena King and Taylor Sunday. Amie, I've had the privilege of coming up to Akwesasne and participating in what you call a culturally safe training, also along these lines of building awareness, raising awareness, and certainly thinking about one of the things that the NYSCADV staff have thought about is how do we bring this back to the work that we do statewide to support what we call mainstream domestic violence programs, to really provide culturally safe services to Indigenous victims of domestic violence and gender-based violence. And so I've really appreciated the training and the support that you've given us. And I know that one of the things that you talked about was the ramifications of the folks that did survive residential schools and coming back into the community, and how that how the impact of that is still present in communities. So I hope that with whatever remarks that you've prepared, that you can also talk about these sort of ongoing long-term consequences of having been taken from families and from communities and put into these schools. But I will leave you to it, and please feel free to introduce yourselves. I don't want to steal any more of your time. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lorian. It's an honor to be asked to join today. And I'm Amie Barnes. I'm the Executive Director of Seven Dancers Coalition. And this is Taylor Sunday, who is our program coordinator, and Keena King, who is our community outreach worker. We are fairly new to presenting in, especially on Zoom. So bear with us, and our presentation does overlap a little bit of what Michelle was talking about. So go ahead, change the slide. So our mission is to uplift the families of Indigenous communities by educating and restoring traditional value with the purpose of strengthening self-confidence and dignity. We strive for an environment of peace and tranquility to heal all Indigenous spirits. So what we do here at Seven Dancers Coalition is we are a statewide coalition of women who are on our board who are more like dedicated, or I don't know the right terminology right now, but to end violence against Native American women. In our history, and what Michelle has shown is in her presentation is that women are dehumanized and not considered human. So with that in our past history, now we can see it in our future we are now the highest race of women who are sexually assaulted in their lifetimes. And not only that, domestic violence, we're the highest statistic for that too. So we here at Seven Dancers are trying to change those kinds of social, what's the word? Social norms. We want to change the way people think about us. And it's kind of like a national thing too. I mean, other coalitions are doing the same thing, just making a social change. And instead of making it all right for rape to happen, well, let's do something about it. So we have a women's program here and we have a men's program. So we work in collaboration together to create a family-oriented services. So we do talking circles for women, we do talking circles for men, we do classes on cultural crafts and stuff like that. It's called Healing Through Art and Expression is what we call it. And it's really about getting people back together again. During COVID, it was a little tough, but we're starting to see the end of it, and hopefully soon we can start meeting in person again. And with our Healing Through Art and Expression, it's not just beading a medallion or anything like that. It's not just that. It's the teachings that we give to them. We plant seeds. The seeds that we plant are actually, the name of the women's program is Seeds of Resiliency. And we plant these seeds, and the women support each other through the classes and develop this togetherness that we're trying to bring back together, people back together. So with that would be like, there would be a topic like today's topic would probably be the 215 graves that that they found these children in. So we do these classes, and it turned into more of a support group than just regular classes. So what we're doing is we're actually bringing these women together to help them heal, to learn something while they're doing it. And it's really successful. Women are really finding the healing that they're looking for. So we also have a men's program, which is Standing the Trees Back Up, where they focus on, they do talking circles, but they focus on how to keep women safe. Their underlying goal is protecting the women. And that's part of our roles and responsibility as Native American people, that one of the men's roles is to protect the family. So we're actually teaching reteaching this to our young people. And this is where it was, where it's gone awry because of all of the assimilation and all of that.
It's lost.
It was definitely lost. Next slide. So this is who we represent. So these are just a really good graphic of all of our tribes that are out there. Next slide. These are all located in the state of New York, which is our service area. So we provide services to all of New York State, all Native American people through New York State. And every year in May, we provide a missing and murdered Indigenous women's event. Next slide. This May 5th, this past, we did, it was our first one in our new building. And there was one part that was virtual, which was the actual education visual part of it. And then we had an on location drive-through event, which was really well attended. We had over 150 people show up, and it was rain or shine, and it was supposed to rain that day, and it didn't rain on us. And we gave out hot dogs, and it was just so nice to have people show up again and to actually talk to people face to face again. So we do a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls event every year in May. And right around April, before the event, I always get college students coming to ask me questions. So one of the questions was, what are the root causes of missing and murdered? Like, why does this happen? So in order for us to figure out, well, why does this happen? Why is it such a big number statistic wise? Why? We have to go back to the beginning. And like Michelle did, she went back to the beginning to show where it all went wrong. And in order for it to really to pinpoint that one thing in history, it wasn't that one thing, but it was a bunch of little things over hundreds of years that that led to this. And so the more that we talk about it, the more that we share what we can about it, we're hoping that in the future, the numbers will come down. So we're going to, okay, next slide. So what are the root causes? Both USA and Canada, because Haudenosaunee is located on the border of Canada and the United States. We have half of our reservation in each country. We are also separated by provinces, Ontario and Quebec, and by counties, Franklin and St. Lawrence County. So it's just, we talk about, like Michelle said, we talk about more about the Canadian policies because we're so close to Canada. And Taylor is actually living in Canada, and Kina was living in Canada, not anymore. So it's like there is no border for us. It's borderless. So we did want to mention a few of the policies, but it all really comes down to I guess the residential schools and boarding schools. Like, they really did a really good job of assimilating us. Next slide. So we're gonna summarize this history a little bit. We're gonna go through it really quickly. Next slide. So our Haudenosaunee, we are a matriarchal culture. We do get our clans and our names from our mother. The clan mothers are the most respected. In our culture, the women are the ones who are held up to a higher regard. They are almost godlike worshipped. In pre-colonial times, the men and the women, oh, next slide. Pre-colonial times, the men and the women had their roles. So as you can see on the slide here, what the men were supposed to do and the women were supposed to do. And it all worked in harmony. There was, everybody had a purpose. Everybody had a place in society, and most of it. So what you have is the children were the center of this. And what would happen was the mothers and the aunties would be the next circle around the children. And then behind that would be the grandmothers, would be the ones supporting the mothers, and the ones with the knowledge, with the wisdom, who would be, you know, teaching the mothers all of this. And this is all constant. This is going on through their whole lives. And then the men are behind everybody, protecting them. Their role is to protect these children. And so when like say residential schools, when these outside agencies would come in and they would take these children out from the center and they would put them in these schools, the men who fought were arrested or beaten or whatever. These structures of family, the family structure actually would crumble. There would be higher rates of alcoholism, addictions, because they don't know how to survive. These families, to go from a huge long house like that to nothing, like they don't have a purpose in life anymore. And some of these poor little kids would never make it home. And that's where in the news today, you know, these poor little kids never made it home. Next slide. So in the creation story, women are precious because they are life givers. At the beginning of the story was when Yojisun, the sky woman, fell from the sky world. She brought with her a daughter in her womb and seeds. Women are especially precious when they say they are pregnant, because she is the portal between the physical world and the spiritual world. At any given time, the baby could go back to the spirit world. Even during labor, they say there's a point where a woman is walking the line between both worlds, working to bring in new life. Next slide. In the pre-Confederacy, there was a lot of fighting and warring with each other. It wasn't always in harmony. The peacemaker made his way through the nations, telling everybody about the great law of peace and what they had to do, which was to unite everyone and be peaceful and to stop warring. His ultimate goal was to get the cannibal to accept his great peace, but knew it would be very difficult on his own because of how powerful the cannibal was. Peacemaker approached a woman named Jukwanse, to help him, and I could say it earlier, to accept his peace, and told her she needed to help to appoint chiefs for all the nations. Before the peacemaker came, she was a mean woman. She had a tragic life, was raped and molested, and this made her hate men and wanted to destroy them. In one version, she was actually the mother of the cannibal. She fell pregnant and abandoned him because he was a product of rape. The cannibal became the way he was because of the trauma and abandonment and hated women so much. Peacemaker and the nation's chief and Jukwanse banded together to make the issue right with her son. Once this is over, the peacemaker gave the power back to the women, and Jukwanse crowned all of the 50 chiefs with their antlers, and she would be called Mother of all nations. So it's important to realize that in our past, it wasn't always, it wasn't unheard of to be raped or beaten or any of that. But it's like how that little story comes about is there's a reason why there was a hatred for men, and it wasn't working. So the peacemaker knew enough to make the issue right and gave the power back to the women. So then that next slide is where the Iroquois Confederacy started, and that's exactly where Michelle went with hers. And next slide. Issue.
So the Doctrine of Discovery, as Michelle had also mentioned, it provided the framework for Christian explorers in the name of sovereign to lay the claim of territories uninhabited by Christians. So if the lands were vacant, they could be defined as discovered. So the settlers believed that the indigenous people were savages and barbarians, and the colonizers used to exploit lands and territories and take away the resources for the native people. So because they were deemed as non-Christian, they were seen as non-human. So it kind of goes back that far of taking everything away from us because they didn't believe that, or they believed that their religion and their way of life was the only way. Next slide. And colonization. Do you have anything to that?
Mm-mm. So with the colonization of the Haudenosaunee, there was a lot of other things that happened too. They brought their religion and converted a lot of our people. And with that became the first assimilating us into their beliefs and their religion. It was like dismantling of our family structure. It was now the women were not as deemed as important. So it was the men who was the privileged. So we're going to talk about, we're going to go into legislation. This helps with, once the colonizers got here, it made it difficult for women to complete their roles and responsibilities. So Keena's going to do a little bit of this.
Roles and responsibilities.
Oh, no, sorry, that was,
Next slide.
that was over here. Next slide.
So the legislation, so like Amie said, we kind of talk a little bit more on the Canadian legislation just because we are so close to the border. But I think it's also important to see how the laws are different, but almost the same in context of the United States and Canada. So next slide. So Canada's Act, the Gradual Civilization Act, it was passed in 1857 and was sought to assimilate Indian people into Canadian settler society by encouraging enfranchisement. And in 1869, the federal government created the Gradual Enfranchisement Act. So both of these acts eventually led into what became the Indian Act to this day. And with the Indian Act, it kind of was like, kind of started assimilating everybody, especially taking away the point of the matriarchal society. So next slide.
Isn't that the one where we get our band numbers? too?
Yep. So the Indian Act is a primary law the federal government uses to administer Indian status, such as our band number, local First Nation governments, and the management of reserve land. It also underlines governmental obligations to First Nation people. The Indian Act attempted to generalize the vast and varied population of people and assimilate them into non-Indigenous society. It forbade First Nations people and communities from expressing their identities through governance and culture. So with the Indian Act too, in the past, if you were a woman and you married outside of a nation, you were forced out, you lost your status, you were completely just pushed right out. So when you think of our culture as being a matriarchal society, what does the Indian Act do for that? Like, it just completely pushes us out. We're supposed to be the ones to uphold our families and to keep our children safe and to teach them. But once we marry out, that gets stripped away from us. In other words, who qualifies to be Indian? So that comes with the blood quantum. I know with our own Mohawk Nation of Haudenosaunee, there's a blood quantum level of what, 50%. So I also have, nephews and nieces that are considered a quarter, but cannot be given a status card because of what had happened in the past, which, in other words, who qualifies? They don't qualify.
So what she's talking about, Mohawk Council of Haudenosaunee, is actually the Canadian government. And we have the St. Regis Mohawk tribe, which is the American side government, tribal government. And each one has its own separate rules and regulations, and each one has its own law enforcement agency as well. So what she's talking about, like for band numbers on the Canadian side, is 50%, where on the American side, it's, I think, a 1/16 or something like that.
It changes. I don't know. I can't ever keep track with them.
Right, yeah. It's something like that. So, and we're all given a number. So we have one on the Canadian side and we have one on the American side.
So next slide. So the Indian Act has been highly criticized for its gender bias and other means of terminating one's Indian status, thus excluding women from the Aboriginal rights. In all situations, a woman's status was entirely dependent on their husband. As stated in Section 12 of the Indian Act, a woman who married a person who is non-Indian is not entitled to be registered. When the Canadian Human Acts Right was passed in 1977, Section 67 was created specifically to prohibit First Nations people from filing an official complaint that the Indian Act was a human rights violation. This itself was later described as a serious disregard for human rights. The exemption of the Indian Act from Canadians' own human rights law is an implicit recognition by the Canadian government of how unreasonable the Indian Act truly is. May 2008, the House of Commons unanimously passed Bill C-21 to repeal this section of the Canadian Human Rights Act. So if you can think of an act that was put in place by the government and a stipulation in there to say, we're going to put this little clause in there to say you can't ever file against this to say that we did wrong. It's shocking. Next slide.
It's shocking that it can happen in today's,
2021.
yeah.
So John A. Macdonald was the first prime minister of the Dominion in Canada of 1867 and 1873. He cleared prairies through deliberate starvation and detention of the Indigenous people in order to make way for European settlement and the construction of the railroad. He authorized the pass system, which required First Nations to obtain permission from their Indian agent to leave their own reserve. So looking up a lot of this history and thinking about this pass system, you know, if I have to leave my reserve to go to the grocery store, I have to report to somebody to say, may I go to the grocery
Get
store? Can I,
groceries.
you know, I think of it as like a passport. And how inhumane, or like you're in like this little cage, it's unreal.
Like even if you had to go get medicine, you
Yeah.
would have to, you know, get permission first.
Yeah, he was a key implementation of the residential school policy that took over 150,000 Indigenous children from their families. So one of the quotes too that really sticks in my head is, the great aim of our legislation has been to do away with the tribal system and assimilate the Indian people in all respects with the other inhabitants of the Dominion, and speedily as they are fit to change. So he implemented one of the most damaging policies in Canadian history. Next slide.
For sure.
So this one actually shocked me as well. This is actually part of the United States Code, is a matter of general and permanent laws in the United States. And I didn't think it was still active. It actually is. So the Secretary of the Interior may, in his discretion, establish such regulations as will prevent the issuing of rations or the furnishing of subsistence, either in money or in the kind of head of in any Indian family. So when I read this, I kept on thinking, what does this even mean? So I'm thinking, if I need any type of assistance and my children do not go to school, that they can withhold that type of food rations from my family. And you're withholding because we are Native American, and it's still active. It's 2021 and a law like this is still active. It's almost sickening. Next slide. So the assimilation is based on the idea that once contained Aboriginal peoples will adopt Western practices. So really it means to become part of a group, country, or society. And when you look up the textbook definition, which is just to become a part of a group or country or society, I think of assimilation and I think of it in a negative context, because the word assimilation has such a long history behind it, and you can't ever unsee that word without that image of residential schools in pre-colonial context, everything behind it. I can't unsee that. It was expected that Native people would be assimilated, meaning that they would give up their own culture, their languages, beliefs, and live and act just like the British settlers. Next slide. So the forced assimilation that led to the loss of culture and spiritual identity, which I find a lot of people today, especially with MMIW, the loss of culture and the loss of their identity. Who are we? What are we? Effects from the residential school system, issues with substance abuse, poverty, and victimization. Next slide. And Duncan Campbell Scott, he was the deputy superintendent of the Department of Indian Affairs from 1913 to 1932. Under Scott's direction, the forcible removal of Indigenous children from their homes to attend residential schools was made compulsory, forever attaching Scott's name to a legacy of violent abuses against these children. I want to get rid of the Indian problem. I do not think of it as a matter of fact that the country ought to continuously protect a class of people who are able to stand alone. Our object is to continue until there is not a single Indian in Canada that has not been absorbed into the body of politic, or there is no Indian question and no Indian department. That is a whole object of this bill. Next slide.
So with all of this, I think we forgot to mention too, that reservations all began. So
Yep.
we went from our territory being all of, like the state to now we're into those little tiny reservations. So our way of life changed, our way of feeding our families changed. All of that changed, our sovereignty changed with these bills, all of it. And we're still fighting with that today to be considered our own nation. So Keena's gonna go over a little bit on residential schools. I know Michelle already went through it, but it's really important to emphasize the why, like, how does it come about? How do Native women, why are we such a target? And it's just important to understand the history of all of it. So, Keena?
Sego, everybody. My name is Keena King. My Mohawk name is Degalon Hyagwa. I am a member of the Wolf Clan family from the Mohawk Nation here in Akwesasne. I know Michelle went over a lot of this stuff that we're talking about. I didn't know if I was able to just kind of speak about. So I'm just gonna totally just speak from the heart here. We've been doing research for a while, and ever since I think it was May 29th when those children's remains were found, it kind of really hit home. The communities, there's been like a dark cloud around the entire community. We've got a lot of messages, and we're trying to just do our part. And so we're in the planning stages of a ceremony, community healing ceremony, and the information that I was really lucky to come across was sitting with our elders and learning. We work with youth here, and I noticed that there's a lot of anger, and they're just carrying that hatred around with them, and they don't even know why. They don't even know why they're so upset and angry, and and it's, I think it's really learned behavior. I just kind of grew out of that anger phase probably about a year ago. So we're just trying to come up with different ideas and programs to kind of teach and just help the next generations to come to unlearn, all of that. Is it okay if I don't pull the slide stuff? There was one thing that I wanted to read in here, because I think we went through this a couple times. It says, when they buried the children, what they didn't know, they were lovingly embraced by the land, held and cradled in a mother's heart. The trees wept for them. With the wind, they sang morning songs their mothers didn't know to sing. Bending branches to touch the earth around them, the Creator cried for them with tears falling like rain. Mother Earth held them until they could be found. Now our voices sing the morning songs with the trees, the wind, light, sacred fire, ensure they are never forgotten as we sing justice. So tapping back into the MMIW also, I'm a domestic violence survivor myself, and a lot of this really hits home for me. I've been doing lots of research along with my partner, Carolyn. So just over the past few days, I've gotten a few messages, and everybody's so angry, and then it really goes back to the creation story also, and what Amie was speaking about, with the women they were never really, honored. And so that's the kind of reminders that are important to me to, talk about our roles and responsibilities as women, and also, how to be gentle with ourselves and our children for the future generations to come, because you know, it's finally our time to speak up. And we're kind of, it's almost like we're recreating a brand new nation here, because I was told not too long ago that, you know, our elders, that they're holding so much hurt and secrets and their pain. And it wouldn't be until those elders have passed on that the spells would be broken. And that's a really unfortunate thing to say, you know, like that's where all our knowledge comes from. But hoping that sooner than later, really soon, actually, you know, these programs come together and just kind of acknowledge our people and the pain and suffering that we've gone through. And it's not even so much like I always like I hear it all the time, you know, they're just trying to get pity. It's not. We're trying to fight for justice here amongst our people, and to finally take a stand. And that's what I have right now. I'm sorry, I apologize. I went completely off, and I just didn't want to repeat myself with all of the, you know, everything that had already been discussed, but I just wanted to just a little bit of input from, you know, what and I don't know anything. I'm just learning here. I'm here to learn and continue to move forward for our future generations to come.
And another thing that we want to do is to honor those children, not just the ones that were found recently, but all of them, all of those beautiful baby children that were taken from their families, and there were families that didn't survive. And I know from personal experience that when your child is taken from you, and it changes everything. And this residential school system really did a good job at assimilating people. And so what we're doing is we are going to bring the culture back to the people. So we provide classes, we work in the best way, the best intention that we have, so that we can provide lessons. And the creation story that we told, and the other stories that we tell, were told when we were kids. Like, we grew up learning this before. We don't know I never heard of these at the length that, and the depth of the knowledge of the story itself. I didn't grow up that way. I grew up and I went to church, and, you know, we didn't learn about those kinds of things. But I'm learning now, and every day is an improvement. And it's important for us to learn our culture, to learn these stories, so that we can teach our children, and our children are our future. And we always think about 7 generations from now. And my husband is always the one to remind me, well, you got to think of the 7 generations. How is it going to benefit 7 generations from now? So by bringing our culture back, and by making it okay, because it wasn't, you know, I grew up in the church, and it wasn't okay to be traditional in my family, you know. But when I married my husband, who was a traditional man, and I started attending the ceremonies, I realized, you know, like, I looked around and I was like, I'm home. This is right. It feels right. So this is what we're trying to do here at Seven Dancers Coalition. We're trying to bring the culture back in any way that we can possibly come up with. We do different things. We try different things. We experiment with different ways of doing it. And this past year with COVID, it has been an eye opener and a learning experience for sure, because now we're getting good at Zoom and virtual and all of that. So we're getting our act on the road, so to speak. So you can change the next slide. And go ahead.
You want to take it from here?
And no, you can do it.
You want me to?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So who ran the residential schools? Many of the government operated residential schools were in partnership with, spell it wrong?
And Anglican.
Anglican.
With the Anglican, Catholic, Methodist, and Presbyterian churches, among others. The government was financially responsible for these schools. Next slide, please. When did residential schools start? Residential schools were started in Brantford, Ontario in 1831. Before Confederation, a handful of schools run by the missionary group started earlier than that. The last one ending in 1996. Next slide, please. Victims of residential schools. 215 children's remains were recently found at Camus Indian Residential School, leaving Indigenous people to feel the heartbreak and pain, reliving the nightmare all over again. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada identified that at least 3,200 deaths, not including the 215 most recent. Due to limitations in the records, it is probable that there are many student deaths that have not been recorded in the register because the record of the death has not yet been located. Next slide, please.
You read that.
Yeah, I read this one already. Next slide, please.
So when we were talking about the question, were these children murdered? It's more, it's not just murdered, it's like neglected. I know there's a documentary that we show for our cultural safety trainings, and it's based out of Seneca. And one of the men on there who attended residential school, his brother was actually in the school with him, but he never saw him. And he found out that he had died from pneumonia. And you know, there's just so many stories out there of these people, these children that were left on their own to fight diseases, to fight colds, to fight all of this. And if you ever get a chance to attend one of our cultural safety trainings, you'll get the full document and the people themselves talking about the experiences that they've had, and it leaves you really feeling it, like how we can't exactly get it out there because we haven't been there.
And recently I was just telling Amie this morning, with the 215 remains being found, social media has taken a huge, I don't even have the word right now because I'm just like so like shocked. So if you go on social media, it's everywhere. Everybody's sharing it, platforms. Last night with the NHL games, Montreal Canadiens had orange stickers on their helmets in honor of the 215 remains. So right now, especially with Amazon Prime, if anybody's interested, I know I watched it last night. It's called We Were Children, and it's actually free. So if you're looking for a movie on, or actually a documentary on residential schools, that one's a really, really good one. And it's stories from two survivors. One actually had passed away now, but it really hits home, and it really, I think about my own children in this, and one being 8 and one being 2, and I couldn't imagine. And hearing these 215 remains being found, it breaks my heart when I look at my own children.
Okay, so how does residential schools, boarding schools relate to missing and murdered women and Indigenous women and girls? So it's that lack of, it's that dehumanizing. Next slide, please. The sexualization of Native American women. I mean, I don't look like that, and neither do these two, but that's the image that's portrayed in social media about Native American women. Next slide. Next slide. So we are seen as dehumanized, not even human. And when you think about all the stories of women who are beaten and left for dead, murdered or abducted, they're just missing, they're gone forever. Nobody hears anything about them. And Joanne Shenandoah, who is Michelle's aunt, does a really awesome video, and she has it on YouTube. It's called Missing You. And it's really heartfelt video that you can watch too. And the number, next video, next slide, is of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls in 2016 was 5,217, but it's been a while, and the number has increased so much that we have lost track of what that number is. Next slide. So there's other factors that that have affected missing and murdered Indigenous women, such as law enforcement, lack of resources to investigate these missing women, people who really don't even care are out there at higher positions that, you know, they won't, they don't investigate with that feeling that we are dehumanized. So next slide. This is one of the questions that we are always asked. How do we not know about this? And how is it not national news when somebody goes missing? And really, that is a really good question, because I believe that that is the key question. How do we not know? And so my question is, so now you all out there do know, and what are you going to do about it? What are you gonna do? You guys getting invited to places that we will never be invited to. And how are you going to bring it up? How are you gonna advocate for us to put mildly to, you know, just help us get that word out, help us with the image of images of Native American women itself, just make us more of a positive image in your societies. And I think we have run out of time, which we didn't think was gonna happen. We really thought that we were gonna be hearing crickets here for a little while, but I think I'll give it back to you, Lorian.
Thank you so much, all of you. I just really appreciate it. That was so powerful. And we do have a few questions. You know, one of the things that I want to sit with is, you know, the fact, Michelle, you said earlier, and Amie, you and your folks said it too, that this isn't just history, this is happening now. And I'd like to sort of, you know, connect what you've shared with us to what we can be doing now. So I appreciate, Amie, that you sort of ended on that note. Now that we know, what do we do next? And so I want to connect this to the domestic violence and rape crisis programs who are in attendance today and get from you a sense of, how can we be doing the best we can in terms of responding in culturally responsive, culturally safe ways when somebody who has been victimized, who is part of an Indigenous community and part of an Indigenous tradition, comes to us for help. And we don't yet have a network of culturally specific Indigenous programs across the state of New York that people can come to. And I know we've all talked about working on that. One of the things that I wanted to think about is jurisdiction. Years ago, 23 plus years ago, one of the very first projects that I worked on at NYSCADV was a collaboration with the Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence and the Division of Criminal Justice Services and many, many, many territories and tribal governments talking about, what happened when there were police that were part of a nation and there needed to be enforcement from either state police or municipalities and those kinds of things. I think we don't have a lot of time to go into that, but Michelle, you are an attorney, and Amie and Seven Dancers, you're a statewide coalition. Are you available to help the local rape crisis programs and domestic violence programs all across the state to sort of parse that out and figure out what a response would be, whether it was police that were part of the nation or whether it was off nation policing and judiciary and all of that. That's one thing that I wanted to make sure that people got connected to. And then just sort of, how can we all be doing better in terms of responding, to victims of domestic violence and gender-based violence and sexual assault, when they come to our attention. We do have some questions, but I'll let you both of you answer that first. And Michelle, maybe we'll start with you and give Seven Dancers a chance to take their breath.
Well, actually, I was going to say, I think Seven Dancers would probably be best to answer a lot of these questions in terms of the response, because that's directly related to the work that they do. I think, something to consider as you're looking at the context of all this is understanding jurisdiction, right? And where these, colonizing governments have decided they want to have a hand in things, or where they decide they want to have hands off. And where they want to have hands off is when we're talking about, actual elimination of people. And so when there's, real crimes that have been committed against our women and against our people, somehow these federal governments want to say, oh, hands off, you're sovereign nations, and, we don't want anything to, we're not going to interfere. But then when you turn around and, we build gaming enterprises, suddenly these governments want to, have their hand in it, and they want to come in and take monies and profits, out of the community, right out of our own communities, because, they claim that, they're, actually the governing bodies in these places. So I think that it's really important for people to understand how these governments, operate. And, it's very selective. And up until recently, this has been a non-issue for most mainstream Americans, US citizens and Canadians. 2 years ago, this news about the residential school wouldn't have been news. It would have been just us Indigenous peoples carrying that burden and, crying out to the public again to say, look what was done wrong. But something shifted in our world in this last year that has made people more awake and more aware of what's going on. And now it's time to listen to the Indigenous peoples. We've been speaking for generations, talking about all of these injustices, and it's time to listen and unlearn what you've learned and learn a new history. But in terms of those direct responses, I'd like to turn it back over to Seven Dancers, because that's directly related to the work that they do.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks, Michelle. So I was just thinking too that we are just a phone call away for all of the agencies out there. We're a phone call away. We have started a satellite office in Western New York. It's halfway between the reservation of Tonawanda and Tuscarora. And we are getting out there. We're spreading our wings and we're flying out there now. So we are doing a lot of services in Onondaga Nation recently, and we're hoping there is a high number of urban Indians, in New York City. There's a whole community out there in New York City that we're hoping to spread our wings out that way too. So we're out there, we're getting out there more. It's been hard for the past year for us to get out and do our community outreach, but we're here. We're definitely here. So give us a call. If you have any questions, anything, just give us a call. We'll help you as best as we can.
Thank you. We'll make sure that everybody has the contact information. I'm sure that's in here someplace. I want to say that, you know, for me, it always feels like to be culturally responsive is to really, and to be trauma informed is to really ask the person, the individual in front of you, what it is that they need in terms of support. But this also feels very specific in terms of the jurisdictional piece as well. And we've talked about this before with domestic violence. So often people are leaving their communities in order to get safe, and how, you know, in this particular scenario, leaving a community can be so doubly traumatized when the community is, you know, something that is providing wholeness for you as a person. And so, you know, I think this should just be the beginning of a conversation that I hope that we can have, you know, in an ongoing way with all of you. I do want to share, people have asked about the name of the documentary, about residential schools. People have also asked about the video, the Shenandoah video. And so if we could post that in the chat, that would be fantastic. We'll make sure that that happens. We do have with the help of Seven Dancers and with Michelle and her consulting, trying to make the clearinghouse that we have on domestic violence and Indigenous peoples more robust in terms of, you know, resources and connection. And so that is something that we're lifting up again this year, again, with their help. So we'll make sure that anything that we learn about, you know, through these conversations is, you know, uploaded and available to folks in that kind of public way on our website. And I'm looking at the rest of the questions.
There's a question there I'd like to respond to, if I may.
Please do.
From Kristen Small that says, are there any Haudenosaunee communities that are still able to live in a way that incorporates some aspects of the Longhouse? Are the communities that are able to be somewhat economically independent from the mainstream capitalist economy? So Kristen, I'd like to respond to that and to let you know that actually all of our communities still have our Longhouse ways. And I think it's important to understand that as we went through those policies today, to understand that in Canada and in the US, that there was a time when it was illegal for us to practice our spiritual life ways. And so a lot of our own leadership and people had to take our cultural practices underground. There were spaces where you know, a lot of leadership, you know, would just say they were Baptists because it was easier than, you know, going through the harm. There were places where our people were directly attacked for, I mean, literally by officials in both governments for being chiefs, for being clan mothers, for practicing the culture. It was outlawed. It was not until 1978 in the United States that it was deemed legal for us to practice our ways of life. So most of us here on this call, I know for myself, that when I was born, it was illegal for my longhouse ways to be practiced. So I think it's really important to understand that. But now, with like the work that we're doing across all of our Haudenosaunee Confederacy, across all Indigenous nations, is that, we are bringing that culture back to the forefront, and it was never lost. I think it's important to understand that there's this real cultural resilience, and that now it can be strong. Right now we can openly practice. Now we can openly talk about it, and what a different world that it is. But our practices have always been here, and our longhouse ways have always guided us. We never lost that thread. Please know that. And then talking about our communities and our economies, like I pointed out, our economy is based on our food and based on our life ways. And so there's a real effort and a real movement to reclaim and to rematriate those ways. I think it's important for people to understand that going back to the land and going back to our way of life is our real economy. We've definitely developed a lot of businesses that are, based on the capitalistic society that have made its way into our communities, but, they come with lots of troubles and lots of, issues, and we do know that. And so there's really a big movement across all of our nations to go back to these ways of life. And I think they're important in the world right now, because our world literally has to reconsider its value system and how it walks in balance with this world. So, yep, thinking about those future 7 generations like Amie was talking about.
Exactly. Oh, thank you so much. And 7 dancers, I see that you are typing some answers to the questions. What can we do as survivors of this macabre deed to do to heal and continue to spread knowledge? I see you're typing an answer there. Is there something that you can say verbally that would be easier than sending that answer as we're wrapping up? And I'd really love for you to have the last word on this. And as we sort of close out our time together, knowing that we will continue to have these conversations for all of those who are interested in doing more and amplifying this issue, that NYSCADV is committed to doing that. But Amie, if you'd like to respond to that, and then we'll sign off, that would be fantastic.
Sure. We are kind of, we are trying to use our voice more and more by doing trainings, by doing education in community, and by training non-native people. So attend our trainings, you'll learn a lot. And Lorian has attended one of our first ones actually. So, and there's no one answer to that, right? I mean, there really isn't anything that I can say other than speak up for us. Make sure you're there. Let your legislators, let your congressmen know, these things are happening, and that's straight across everybody. Just let them know.
Thank you so much. We'll definitely do everything we can to amplify and to stay connected, and to make sure that everybody in the state who is among our contacts and our membership are part of this conversation as we all continue to move forward. Thank you so much. This was extremely powerful. And Michelle, thank you for warning us in the beginning that it would be heavy. And it is. I hope that we can leave this and all of your remarks and the content that you've shared with a sense of hope for making things better in the future. I always want to leave on a note of hope. And I really just appreciate you sharing, all of your personal lived experience, but also your experiences and your knowledge and expertise. It's been just a wonderful experience here. And I will let you sign off. That's the last from me. Michelle and Amie, Keenan, Talon, anything that you'd like to share before we stop the recording?
I just want to say now a big thank you to everybody for being here today. Take this information and share it widely. Only you can get the laws changed together, can get these policies and racist ideologies out of the law and out of the way that these countries think. So now
Exactly, Michelle, exactly. Thank you everybody for attending and taking it easy on us.
And if you have any more questions, I know we didn't get to answer them all. You can find us on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. Our website has our emails on there. So if you're looking for anything particular, shoot us an email. Shoot us anything on Facebook. We can help as much as we can, but use your platform and share and share and share. That's all I can say.
Thank you. And we posted both the Indigenous concepts, rematriation is on there, Seven Dancers Coalition, the website is on there. So we have run out of time. Thank you so much. We will continue to do this work with you in partnership and in collaboration. And we'll all be back in touch soon. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.